So, back before we had the great leaps and bounds in our technology, we had canaries. And miners would use canaries in a cage, take them down in the mine. They were used as an early detection device if any harmful gases were present, because the canary would pass out first. And that was the miner's signal, basically to GTFO. We have those now, and they are massively abundant. So much so that I think it all turns into white noise. And I think a lot of people too, are just kind of living their lives. There's a normalcy bias, and that's pretty normal, pretty common. But if you're a prepper and you're in the prepping community, you're paying attention to all this information that you get wherever you decide to get it from, and you are trying to forecast out 6 months to a year, anything, to try to see what is coming, what's going to happen. And before 2020, we didn't really have anything to forecast that was, we did, but not to the extent that we have now. There's definitely some very possible events on the horizon that are pretty easy to see if you're just listening to your mainstream nightly news. So I'm going to give you guys some articles today for some information that I found. You can make your own opinions from it and take it from there. But here's some good reasons to get your butts to the store. Okay, this first one is from Fox News. Title reads, Russia-Ukraine war having devastating effect on the food supply, says Goya CEO. Goya Foods CEO Bob Unane warned on Fox and Friends Sunday that the war between Russia and Ukraine is having a devastating effect on food supply, as shortages are expected to contribute to higher inflation. President Biden said last month that a food shortage is going to be real following the sanctions that were placed on Russia by the U.S. government as a result of the Russian President Vladimir Putin invasion into Ukraine. With regard to food shortage, yes, we did talk about food shortages, and it's going to be real, Biden said during a press conference at NATO summit in Brussels. I'm sure you guys all remember that. The price of the sanctions is not just imposed upon Russia, he added. It's imposed upon an awful lot of countries as well, including European countries and our country as well. In response, Yunnan told co-host Rachel Campos Duffy Sunday that there are two wars raging. The first war is a war on fossil fuels, and that has sent inflation skyrocketing, he said. We're pacing 7, 8, 9, now 13% per month in our foods. He also noted that the cost of transportation has affected every facet of the economy. This, we all know, is true. You have food shortages, which is causing prices of food to go up. It's a supply-demand ratio. And then when you throw in that whole transportation because of oil, food gets here on trucks, people. Everyone knows this. So, Russia and Ukraine account for around 29% of the global wheat exports, 19% of the global corn supplies, and 80% of the world's sunflower oil exports. This reliance has many traders worried that any further military force could trigger a massive scramble by food importers to replace supplies normally sourced from the Black Sea region. Another article I read is that this is already true because sunflower oil and grapeseed oil not being available. You have what I'm supposing is a large number of food manufacturers, the processed food market that is using these, and I'm sure it's more than just that are now scrambling to rewrite their recipes, which costs what? Money. Who's going to pay for that? We're going to do it. But they're rewriting their recipes for different oils to be used. So, just another facet of price hikes at your local store. Anyways, we're going to move on to another one, and this is about fertilizer. So, this is coming from a guy named Tony Will, and he is a chief executive officer of CF Industries Holdings, a leading producer in nitrogen fertilizer. He states, "My concern at the moment is actually one of a food crisis on a global scale, a global basis." This is a Reuters article. So on Saturday, Peru declared a state of emergency in its agricultural sector over fears of food insecurity. The decree said that the nation's planted areas have fallen 0.2% in August due to rising fertilizer prices, and that the volume of grain Peru imports for animal feed has likewise declined over cost concerns. The government is now drafting a plan to increase the country's food supply. We have something similar going on in Brazil. Let's see, where is it? I'll just go back to the beginning. How about that? Western sanctions on Russia, a major exporter of potash, ammonia, urea, and other soil nutrients, have disrupted shipments of those key inputs around the globe. Fertilizer is key to keeping corn, soy, rice, and wheat yields high. Growers are scrambling to adjust. The pivot can be seen in agricultural powerhouse Brazil, where some farmers are applying less fertilizer to their corn, and some federal legislators are pushing to open protected indigenous lands for the mining of potash. So something similar with that is the circa 1980s CRP program. That's Conservation Reserve Program, that takes a total of 25 million acres and places it into a reserve in an attempt to lower our greenhouse gases and CO2 emissions and the like. Up until a couple weeks ago, we were only at 20 million. But now, because one of our major pressing concerns is the environment, Biden has moved that final 5 million acres into the program, thus maxing it out. Poor timing, I think, but maybe if this food crisis is manufactured, then maybe not. Maybe it's all part of the plan. So, where was I? In Zimbabwe and Kenya, small farmers are reverting to using manure to nourish their crops. In Canada, one canola farmer has already stockpiled fertilizer for the 2023 season in anticipation of higher prices ahead. Farmers elsewhere are making similar moves. Reuters spoke with 34 people on 6 continents, including grain producers, agricultural analysts, traders, and farm groups. All expressed concern about the cost and availability of fertilizer. Here it goes on to state that in the United States, fertilizer bills have jumped 12% this year, and they rose 17% in 2021. So you're looking at roughly a 30% increase, although I've seen accounts of 300% increase. So who do you believe? Reuters might be softening the punch here. Not sure. Some growers are contemplating switching to crops that require fewer nutrients. Others plan to cultivate less acreage. Others say they'll simply use less fertilizer. Strategy crop expert predict will hurt yields. Production is most at risk in developing nation. Luckily, we live in the United States of America, and here, crises usually hit us last because of our geolocation, I suppose. But nonetheless, I think that should tell us that the time's ticking. It's hitting all these other countries, and they're starting to say, hey, we ain't selling any more of this, we ain't selling any more of that. We need to keep it for ourselves because we can forecast and we can see what's coming. So this part is called double whammy. Global fertilizer prices were already higher prior to Russia's February 24th invasion of its neighbor, as a record natural gas and coal prices forced some fertilizer makers to cut output in that energy-hungry sector. Ukraine's cities have been besieged by missiles, blah, blah, blah. We already know about all that. Combined, Russia and Belarus account for more than 40% of the global exports of potash last year, one of 3 critical nutrients used to boost crop yields, Dutch lender Rabobank said this month. Additionally, Russia accounted for about 22% of the global exports of ammonia, 14% of the world's urea exports, and about 14% of monoammonium phosphate, all key kinds of fertilizers. So, we have rising food prices. We have these sanctions imposed on Russia that are hurting us as well. We have sanctions imposed on Russia, and then this geopolitical conflict that is causing nations that were once willing to trade these critical ingredients for agricultural crops with us. They're no longer doing that. And for the people that are saying, well, hey, they only account for this much, guess what? The other nations are locking it up too. So this is all concerning, especially when you throw in this third thing, which is the drought. So I'm at climate.gov. Spring outlook for drought, temperature, and precipitation. Severe to exceptional drought has persisted in some areas of the West since the summer of 2020, and drought has expanded to the southern plains and lower Mississippi Valley, said John Gottschalk, Chief Operation Prediction Branch of the NOAA's Climate Prediction Center. With nearly 60% of the continental U.S. experiencing minor to exceptional drought conditions, this is the largest drought coverage we've seen in the U.S. since 2013. So short-term drought recently developed in a region stretching from North Carolina southwards to parts of Florida. So the map here kind of shows like basically, I'll just overlay it so you guys can see it. It goes on to say that there is some above average precipitation, mostly around the portions of the Great Lakes, Ohio Valley, Mid-Atlantic, and West Coast Alaska. It goes on to lay out some flood risks too, which I'll post right here so you can see it. And basically what we're looking at here, if farmers are putting less herbicides, pesticides, and fertilizers on their crop, their yields are going to be less. So that means less food on top of whatever they are spending is going to cost more, and that's going to be directly passed on to us, the consumer. That's if it gets to the store, which it gets to the store by a truck that uses, petroleum products, which are on the rise too. So you have 3 or 4 different facets, and that critical one, here's the drought. It's supply-demand ratio. Remember that. So stock up, be prepared, do your guys' things, and I'll see you guys next time.